Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the operator meeting today. My name is Hannah Hickam, and I'll be your host. I believe we have an announcement from Greg, and so I will allow him to unmute himself and speak, although I will have to give him that authority first. All right, Greg, go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, good morning, everyone. Just wanted to make a quick announcement as PFAS and PFAS chemicals have been coming up in news stories, et cetera, and just wanted to remind folks how we are handling PFAS with respect to spills and releases here at COGCC. As a reminder, we are an implementing agency for the groundwater standards and classifications of the Water Quality Control Commission, and COGCC is following the lead from CDPHE on addressing PFAS contamination. So WQCC did put out policy 20-1, which describes how to implement the narrative standards for groundwater. And as they relate to PFAS. And so COGCC will be, continuing to rely on the policy 20-1 as guidance for our implementation. And just, as an aside, we are, definitely looking at spills from operations where PFAS may be used on oil and gas locations. So besides just hydraulic fracturing fluids and firefighting foams, if there are PFAS chemical constituents to other fluids that are spilled on a location, we will be looking into those and again utilizing that policy 20-1. So that's just a quick announcement on that. So thanks for your time.
Great, thank you, Greg. Next up, we have Chris Eisinger with the Form 8, 4, and 41 updates, and he's going to share his own screen. So I will stop sharing mine.
Thanks, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. I just also have a couple quick announcements about form updates. Yeah, let me get this. So the first one regarding the Form 8, as many of you may have seen previous operator meetings or heard, we are moving to electronic Form 8 and a new electronic payment system. For a few reasons, some technical hiccups, we have decided to delay the implementation of the new electronic Form 8. It is essentially done and complete, but we were concerned that we would be having people provide payments for the fourth quarter levy in a very short period of time. And especially with electronic payment systems, we want to make sure everything is in perfect order. So that means for the fourth quarter payment of 2021, which is due March 1st, we will ask that all payers use the traditional method, the PDF Form 8 that's available online on the forms page, just as you've done before. And you will need to mail in a paper check one more time for this particular payment. Again, we just want to make sure everything is good with our electronic payment system. And so we certainly will have things in order for the next levy payment, which will be due June 1st. And we'll give you some more instructions. For the most part, everything is as we've talked about already, but sometime in March or 8, we'll give an update and let everybody know that it's available. So the next form update, the Form 4, we recently added a tab for providing information about gas capture, your gas capture plans. This is related to Rule 903D. This is currently being tested by our own staff, and we hope to have this available for people to use very soon. My hope would be sometime in the next week or early next week. And then finally, we have a new electronic form 41 available in web forms. This was missing during our migration from the old electronic form system, and we now have this available. For anyone who is submitting electronic form 41, there are attachments that can be provided, need to be attached to it for any supporting claims you have. We will be updating the instructions. It is a very simple, straightforward form, just as it was before. And the staff contact for this will be Terry Eikenoy. And so if you have any questions about that and you are submitting a Form 41, please reach out to her or myself. So that's all I have. Hannah, thank you.
Great, thank you, Chris. Next up, I believe we have Sabrina Trask with the overview of OGDP application process. And let me just pull that up and share my screen. And Sabrina, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay, Hannah?
Yes, I can. Let me just find my Zoom controls again. They just hide out sometimes. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sabrina Trask, Planning and Permitting Manager. Next slide, please, Hannah. I wanted to just do a quick run through of the OGDP application process from staff's perspective. So this is not going to discuss the operator's requirements as far as notification or anything like that. This is kind of the staff's checkpoints of how we process an OGDP application. Next slide, please, Hannah. So the first step then is completeness determination. There's 4 components to an OGDP application. There's the hearing application, which comes in through e-filings, and then there's the web forms, Form 2A, and there might be more than one Form 2A, a 2B, and a 2C. The e-filing hearing application needs to be reviewed by 3 different groups in the agency. It's going to have a permitting review. The permitters review the 500 series rule requirements and the spacing, any spacing requests. The engineers will review the geologic and engineering testimony, and then the OGLA team will review the hearing application for consistency with the forms 2A, 2B, and 2C. The web forms component of an OGDP application, again, is the 2A, 2B, 2C, and that is entirely the OGLA review. So the completeness determination will be made once all the rule-based requirements have been met. When you're thinking about completeness, think of it like a jigsaw puzzle. You take the box, you take the lid off, and you dump all the pieces on the table. So completeness is kind of like staff is sorting through and counting the pieces and making sure all the pieces are there. Once the OGLA team passes completeness on behalf of the permitters and the engineers, the hearings unit will schedule and notice the hearing. 60 days is the minimum per rule. 90 days is what we're using as our default, and we could have as much as 120 days allowed. Next slide, please, Hannah. So once it passes completeness, public comment opens and any consultation periods open, and this begins staff's technical review of the 2A, 2B, and 2C. This is done entirely by the OGLA team. So for this part of the kind of puzzle analogy, this is where the OGLAs are going to do a deep dive into each individual puzzle piece. They're going to look at all the fine details. They're going to look at all the nuance, every individual piece to get an understanding of every piece. For the 2A, 2B, and 2C, that's all the plans, attachments, and data fields, adding in the BMPs. On the Form 2B, that will be reviewed for reasonability. Again, the Form 2B is not utilized as a decision-making tool as part of the OGDP application process. It is just to bring in cumulative impact data into CIDR, the Cumulative Impact Data Evaluation Repository. This is when staff will undergo any formal or informal consultations. So meetings with CDPHE, CPW, public water system administrators, that sort of thing. And this is where there's a lot of back and forth and ongoing communication with the applicant. One of the things I want to point out is that during technical review, if there are material changes being requested after completeness, if the operator is requesting material changes, or if there are a lot of significant changes being made to the application, it may require a continuance of the hearing. It may also require renoticing or reopening of the public comment period per Rule 303C2. Next slide, please, Hannah.
Sorry.
You're awesome, Hannah. Thank you for running the slides. It's too hard for me first thing in the morning. So there's sort of an informal step here that is not in the rules, but it's a step that we have always had. And that step is a little more robust now than under the old rules. And that's staff's final review. This is going to be done by the senior OGLA staff. So the senior OGLA specialist, that position is vacant, but vacant at the moment, but will be filled in the next number of weeks. And the OGLA supervisor and potentially the permitting, planning and permitting manager. So the reason for this final review is to give the application a once over with a fresh set of eyes. So this is adding a new person to the jigsaw puzzle. They're going to see all the pieces and they're going to catch those weird pieces that are outliers that the person who's been staring at all those puzzle pieces for a long time might have missed. So this is an opportunity for staff to identify any sort of last minute questions, concerns, issues. At this point, once we get those last minute issues resolved, we're going to lock the Form 2A. I know it's tempting for applicants and for staff to want to keep sort of trying to approach perfection in the application, but we do have to lock the Form 2A down so that we can publish it in a state at a point. So this is when that happens. Anything that the applicant wants to change on the Form 2A, after we lock the Form 2A down, the applicant will have to bring that up at the hearing and introduce it to the commissioners at the hearing. So we're trying to avoid that by addressing everything in the Form 2A prior to this final review. The final review is, our goal for accomplishing the final review is approximately 3 weeks prior to the hearing. Next slide, please, Hannah. So then the next big step, of course, is the director's recommendation. And this is where the lead OGLA specialist, the senior OGLA leadership is going to basically provide or create a synthesis of all the application materials. So we've got a hearing app, a Form 2A, a Form 2B, the Form 2C was approved at completeness. But we've got all these puzzle pieces, and now we're looking to make sure that all the puzzle pieces are properly fit together. Everything, all the pieces are accounted for. There's no missing pieces, and the picture that those pieces create is a clear picture that the commissioners and the public can understand. So there still is a potential for more last minute questions from OGLA staff to the applicant. As we're writing the director's recommendation, as we're writing responses to any public comments, as we're writing any responses to any consultations, such as a CDPHE consultation, we might come up with questions that weren't addressed in the application. Hopefully these are small questions, clarifying questions, but do be prepared as an applicant to receive, to possibly receive last minute questions from staff as we are writing the director's recommendation. This is not an opportunity to do a wholesale change of anything. This is just the last little bit of fine tuning that we need to write a good director's recommendation. Our goal is to get the director's recommendation published 2 weeks prior to the hearing. And the reason for that is to allow the commissioners to have enough time to adequately and thoroughly review the entire application. If they do have questions, then they'll be able to address those prior to the hearing. So this does start the commissioner's formal review. Next slide, please, Hannah. Once the commissioners are formally reviewing the application, as it's been locked in place, by the director's recommendation. They do have an opportunity to meet with staff, the permitting manager, possibly the lead OGLA, or the OGLA supervisor, to ask questions about our technical review or about the director's recommendation. Any questions that they have about the application that need to go to the applicant will be forwarded to the applicant through our hearings manager, Mimi Larson. Then on the day of the hearing, the applicant will have an opportunity to present their application formally in a presentation to the commissioners. Staff will have an opportunity to present. We generally don't feel that we need to, because our presentation is the director's recommendation, but we certainly are available to commissioners to answer any questions. The commissioners will have an opportunity to deliberate, to ask questions of the applicant, to ask questions of staff. They will finish with a vote. Next slide, please, Hannah. And then there's a bit of a process, an administrative process after the hearing. If the OGDP application is approved, it takes staff a week or two to sort of wrap up all of the loose ends on our side. And I know that applicants are eager to get their Form 2As, the day that it's approved at a hearing, but we do have some administrative processes to follow. So the hearings unit will finalize the commission order for the OGDP. If there was a spacing order requested as part of the OGDP application, the hearings unit will also finalize the spacing order. So we're going to wait a couple of days to get those order numbers solidified. If there were any conditions of approval applied by the commissioners onto this OGDP application, then the OGLA staff will literally copy and paste those onto the Form 2As. We also have some updating that we'll do on the OGDP scout card, adding the order numbers, adding the expiration date, adding the hearing date, that sort of thing. And then once all of those data pieces are filled in and double checked, then we will go into web forms and literally approve the Form 2A and pass the Form 2B. This process takes about 1 to 2 weeks after the hearing, more so depending on whether or not the commissioners applied any conditions of approval onto the OGDP application. And I think that's all that I have. Great. And I'm happy to take questions at the end of today's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Sabrina. And yes, if you have questions, please go ahead and chat those in and we will answer them at the end. Next up, I believe we have Sean Hackett. And that is the CDPHE consultation guidance development. Sean,
Thank you.
Be able to unmute yourself. Oh, good.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you. And
thank you.
You may proceed.
Okay, perfect. And I won't be going over the presentation on your screen just yet.
Oh.
That will be the next presentation. But thank you for the intro, and Sabrina, thank you for the presentation. That provides a nice intro to the topic that I'm going to discuss, which is CDPHE consultations, which may play a role in COGCC's application review process. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sean Hackett. I'm the Energy Liaison at the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. And one of the core functions I play in this role is overseeing and managing CDPHE consultations under COGCC's rules. And in order to provide the public and the regulated community with greater certainty and transparency, CDPHE is working on updating guidance about our consultation role on certain oil and gas development plans and comprehensive area plans pursuant to COGCC's Rule 309F and Rule 314. And at a high level, what these consultation rules establish is that COGCC will consult with CDPHE in certain limited circumstances to facilitate their efforts to identify, avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse impacts. And these consultations are required if they're requested by a local government or if an operator seeks a variance from specific rules that are outlined in Rule 309F. And the rule also gives the COGCC director as well as CDPHE the ability to request a consultation. And the rules themselves don't specify the circumstances under which CDPHE may request a consultation. So as you'll see in the guidance that I'm hoping CDPHE will be able to share with our colleagues at COGCC in the next week or two, and then hopefully a week or two after that, we'll put that out for public comments. What you'll see in there is we want, CDPHE and I believe COGCC as well, we recognize our consultation role to be limited to CDPHE making recommendations on best management practices or conditions of approval for COGCC to consider. But the ultimate decision on whether or not to approve a permit or a variance request and what, if any, conditions to apply will be made by COGCC based on their interpretation of their statutory and regulatory authority. So there is some existing guidance available on COGCC's website right now, and to just provide a preview of some of the updates you might see, we'll expand that, provide some additional clarifying language around when CDPHE might recommend additional best management practices or conditions of approval, when we might ask for a consultation in the first place, and when we might even recommend denial of a permit application. And it's still, like I said, in draft form, but the circumstances we're considering requesting a consultation on would include whenever there's an oil and gas location that's proposed within 2,000 feet of a residential building unit or a high occupancy building unit, or when there is a proposed location within or affecting a disproportionately impacted community. So if the operator if the proposal meets one of these criteria, what you'll see in the guidance is that CDPHE will encourage operators to fill out a CDPHE consultation tab in their Form 2A. And that tab provides operators with the opportunity to select from a list of CDPHE recommended best management practices and propose additional BMPs in order to avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse impacts. And like I said, I'm hoping to finalize this draft shortly and share that with my colleagues at COGCC. And then we will be publishing that soon to get feedback from members of the public and the regulated community. And one thing we'll be especially interested in is any specific feedback on when CDPHE might consider recommending denial on a permit. So thank you for the opportunity to present on that, and be on the lookout for that guidance.
Thank you, Sean. And if there's any questions for him, then please put those in the chat. We'll get to those at the end. And then Sean, can you tell me who is presenting for the water division? Is it Mary?
I believe Mary will take the lead if I'm not mistaken, and Randy Johnson-Hufford is also in attendance as well, so she might need to be elevated.
Okay, yes, I see her. Let me go ahead and make her a co-host, and then Mary, you should be able to unmute yourself and I will get your presentation right up. There you go.
Okay, so thank you, Sabrina. Will you be driving the presentation or do I need to do that?
Oh, I got it. And it's Hannah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. Sabrina was just.
All right, thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
And thank you, attendees. My name is Mary Welch. I'm with CDPHE. I am a permit writer. I work on stormwater permits, the industrial stormwater permit, the general permit, as well as some MS4 permits. And today I wanted to take up some of your time to deliver a short but very important message about oil and gas facilities, and it has to do with exemptions under our industrial stormwater general permit. Now this permit exempts oil and gas facilities from coverage unless they've had a reportable quantity in a stormwater discharge. And until recently, our understanding has been that pretty much any oil and gas facility that has not had a reportable quantity has been eligible for that exemption. However, more recently, we encountered some EPA guidance that suggests that's not the case for some types of oil and gas facilities. So some facilities might now require permit coverage, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But a couple things I want to emphasize are that in most cases, most oil and gas facilities still will be eligible for the exemption under our COR 900,000 permit. And then the other thing I want to emphasize is that what I'm talking about today only applies to industrial stormwater permits. It does not apply to a construction stormwater permits. Okay, so if we could go to the next slide. All right, so this is the regulation that exempts oil and gas from the stormwater permits. And I've bolded the text oil and gas exploration, production, processing, or treatment operations or transmission facilities, because this is really the key to understanding who's exempt and who isn't. Now, in our permit, we determine who's required to be covered based on the SIC codes. That's a standard industrial classification codes. So for the oil and gas facilities, we have a list of SIC codes that, unless they are exempt, they require permit coverage. And now up until about this past year, our understanding was that pretty much any of those SIC codes would be considered oil and gas exploration, production, processing, or treatment operations or transmission facilities. But EPA guidance now suggests there might be some support-related facilities that don't meet that definition. So if we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so I've put in this first bullet, it's a link or reference to the preamble language that talks about what exactly is exploration, production, processing, treatment operations, and transmission facilities. And it's really there just for your reference. I don't think it's anything anyone needs to really study in detail, but it gives you an idea of the background of what's considered exempt or not. And some of the types of facilities that are exempt from our stormwater requirements under this permit are mainly things that take place at the well pad. The drilling, midstream processing plants, pump stations, central liquid waste treatment systems, things that are located there at the drill pad. And there are more examples. So what then is not exempt? And if we can go to the next slide, please. Typically, these are the things that are downstream from the drill pad. And they involve the support, physical, chemical transformation of raw materials into final manufactured products. And perhaps the biggest example, the best example, are things that are support facilities, centralized equipment maintenance, storage, suppliers, maybe facilities that do repair work, contractors, things like that, that support the work at the drill pad, but that aren't located right there. And let's go to the next slide, please. So in short, the best thing to do is EPA has this really good website, and they list examples of the types of facilities that are exempt from oil and gas regulation, from the COR 900,000 stormwater permit requirements. And then they have a list of facilities that are example facilities that are not exempt. So I would encourage everyone to go to that website and look at the list. And if your facility clearly falls under an exempt example, then you don't really need to do anything. You're not required to have permit coverage unless you've had a reportable quantity in a stormwater discharge. We do ask that you pass on this message to contractors or suppliers that you know of, that they may require some permit coverage. Now, if your facility clearly falls under a category that's not exempt, then you need to either apply for permit coverage under the COR 900,000 permit, or one alternative to this permit is a no exposure certification. And the no exposure certification, basically, it's a lot simpler than the permit requirements. And that's for situations where everything is either done indoors or undercover. So there's no exposure of pollutants to stormwater. And if you want to apply to either of those, just go to our website. We have the applications there. If your facility is kind of in between and you're not sure if it's exempt or not exempt, the best thing to do would be to give me a call and I can help you figure that out. So why are we telling you this now? And this is important also. We are renewing our COR 900,000 permit. We expect to have a draft out for public notice in the next month or two. So this is your chance. If you do require permit coverage, you probably want to be involved in the stakeholder process. And I can provide a link in the chat where you can sign up to receive notifications Here. Okay. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say about this permit. But I imagine folks might have questions. So what are your questions?
Great, thank you, Mary. Yes, questions may be typed into the chat. If you would like, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question, but chat questions are great too and I can read those off. And I'm astonished there's no questions at all yet, so hang tight there. That's our last presentation, so there's no questions.
Okay, well, I
Good.
flew through things pretty fast, so please just give me a call if you do have any questions.
Thank you, Mary. I'll give it a few more minutes. Oh, here we go. Are orphan wells exempt?
Oh, that's one I'd probably have to dig into. Yeah, I think if it's an orphan well, I mean, is there activity actually taking place or is there still materials exposed? I think it would, when they're plugging, okay, I think if there's some kind of industrial activity taking place and if it falls under like a description of well pad drilling, oil and gas field like operations at a site, it is probably exempt.
All righty.
And yeah, and this exemption, it mainly is going to apply to support facilities, contractors that are located off-site. So if they supply pipes for you, or if they supply drilling fluids, possibly, they may not be exempt. If they do repair work on your equipment and they do it off-site, they may not be exempt. So we don't anticipate too many facilities will be kicked into this category, but some might be.
Great, thank you, Mary. I'm just going through the questions. There's another one for Sabrina, but I just want to make sure. The question, are any wells for sale at this point? I'm not sure who that's for, if it's for Mary or if it's for someone else. And then Mary, would you need additional context for that, or is that something that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that question. I don't know about well sales.
No worries. Whoever
I'm a
asked that
stormwater person.
can you just elaborate or rephrase the question a little bit, and then we'll answer this one up here. Thank you, Sabrina, for the presentation. Are Form 2Cs approved after completeness?
Yes, Jeff, the Form 2C is approved at the completeness determination. And the reason why the Form 2C is approved is because that's how Web Forms generates the OGDP ID number. So once the Form 2C is approved, that basically locks in the application as submitted. So the Form 2C again is the Oil and Gas Development Plan certification. It's the applicant's way of saying that they have submitted all the components of their application. And then as staff reviews it for completeness, once we've determined that it's complete, we do approve the Form 2C.
Thank you, Sabrina. I have another question. Are inactive or suspended wells with surface case vent flow or gas migration issues exempt?
So I think it would depend, is this something that takes place at like a location where you're doing drilling or pumping? If so, then it's still exempt. If it's associated with that drilling operation, it doesn't sound like it's more of a support facility, so I think it would still be exempt.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, I didn't get a follow-up on the wells for sale. So we'll just leave that one. You can feel free to reach out to me directly if you'd like, and I will send that to somebody to answer.
I think they were talking about the plugging operations. If wells for sale were involved in plugging operations. So again, anything that's located at a well is probably still exempt.
Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes for more questions to come in.
So I'll just fill a little air here. We have been having internal conversations about how to make the most of this meeting. We're hoping to, both provide you information and a platform to ask questions about. But we appreciate that, this digital environment is sometimes tough to engage in. So I guess I just want to emphasize that we really are looking to try to find ways to help make this be a more collaborative conversation where you can provide input on things that you see happening, as well as questions regarding our specific agenda. So, if you have ideas about how to make this meeting be more effective, I'd love to hear about them. And I would just encourage you to overcome all of the challenges of a digital environment and use this opportunity as we can best use it to make sure that we're communicating well. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Scott. We did get another question to come in, but I'm not sure who it's for, but I'll just read it out loud. How many wells need to be plugged in Colorado, and how are they able to be located? And that doesn't seem like one of the topics that we went over today, but if somebody wants to answer, they can feel free to do so.
Yeah, that's such a dynamic question. I mean, the status of a well being plugged is determined largely by the operator and their business plans. When businesses fail, sometimes the orphan well program has to begin that process, and then we identify the structures and wells that need to be plugged. But the determination of when a well needs to be plugged is largely an operational decision by the owner operator of those wells. And, there's no mandate, right, to plug a certain number of wells or to try to reduce the inventory of wells. It's all being driven by the operational business plans. I'm not sure if that's responsive to the question or not, but that's the best I could interpret that question.
Okay, they're asking to speak, so let me just look them up real quick and I will let them ask any follow-up questions. Let's see. Oh, there it is, sorry. All right, that's interesting. Oh, good, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Naish Jones, and I just had a couple of questions. I want to thank you guys for allowing me to get questions answered, because I really wanted to know what was going on with the matter. So quick question. I know that the operations team do know the wins and hows and where at say so, but it has drawn attention to the state that there is an issue here with these wells being abandoned, and we don't know for sure what is going on with each and every location, as well as the hole that need to be plugged. My more concern is I just want to make sure that everybody is right on time and with everything as getting things taken care of. As well as ways to go about the plan that I have to help this problem be resolved, and also moved and resolved in other states, because there is other states that's around us that have the same problem too as well.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jones. I appreciate the comment, and I'm sure that's something that our commission, I know that's something our commission is dealing with as they review rules and our operational practices. And I'm thinking that, you know, part of your concern might be associated with the financial assurance rulemaking. And so I know that a lot of those questions will come up in that venue as well. You know, we do know the operational status of all the wells in Colorado. That's a requirement that the operators have to report to us each month. They report the operational status of every well. And so we're aware when the wells are being plugged or temporarily abandoned or shut in on a monthly basis. And based on that activity, we then implement our rules to either require them to do additional reporting or to do some testing when they come back online. There's a number of different requirements that go into place. And then I know that, you know, part of what the financial assurance rules are considering is how to deal with inactive wells in a new way. And so we're looking forward to some, you know, new information and guidance from the commission as they work through that very complicated problem. So thank you for clarifying your question. And I think now we understand your concern, and it's a, you know, it's a valid concern, but I think it's a concern that the commission will be addressing in their rules more than maybe we'll be able to respond to in this more operations focused meeting. But thank you so much for that and for being here.
Oh, yes, thank you. You know, yeah, because like I said, we could take this problem and make it turn it around and make it a more money thing for the state of Colorado. Colorado can be a big solver as well as for other states to implement this too as well, where other states can pay us while we adapt and get this resolved to where we won't have to run to this in the near future, 15, 20 years from now. I think that's more important than resolving that with the operations on how we should do these things, because we should be the one that makes the money with other states of getting this process done so they don't have to worry about it in the future. Right. I just wanted to implement that idea. I don't know how or who or when I should talk to somebody about the idea that I have.
So my encouragement, Ms. Jones, is to get onto our website and look for the public comment registration for the rulemaking process. That'll be where your comments are probably going to be the most impactful, because you'll be addressing the commissioners at that point.
Okay.
And so I would encourage you to go to that resource, and that'll be where I think you're able to get you know, some more responsive answers to your questions, because we're simply unable to respond to that. Right? It's a commissioner question that it would be inappropriate for us to try to opine about what rule to implement. So thank you so much, though.
And I've pulled up the website right here. This is our main website. The second item down is for the public comment sign up, I think.
Okay.
Oh, or maybe not. Oh, did I click on the right thing? Public comment at the February 9th commission hearing. Is that?
While
that's not right. I'm sorry.
While Hannah's helping Ms. Jones with that, are there other operational questions that anyone had?
Hearings. Oh, I have another question here. Meeting suggestion. I greatly benefit from the presentations on the various forms since they have changed due to the rulemaking. If you could incorporate more into the meetings, it would be helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Sanford. Here's the public comment number for 19. I'm going to drop my email for you, Miss Jones. If you'll just email me, then I will send you what you need back. I'm sorry it wasn't super easily available. All right, and let's see. So, here's another one. COCA would welcome a meeting with IT on the possibility of bulk form upload for several forms as well, or two. Thank you for that. Make sure I didn't miss anything.
Whoever just.
I was
go
just
ahead, Chris.
Chime in. Christy, my apologies. I will reach out to you very soon here, and we'll revisit that topic. So my apologies for the delay.
And then Scott, did you have something or no?
No, just appreciate everybody's time. And like I said, really am hoping that we can make this be the most effective use of our time and be able to hear from you as well as you hear from us. So thank you for being here. And thanks, Hannah, as always, for doing such a great job keeping us organized and hosting us.
Great, thank you, Scott. And thank you everyone for being here. The next operator meeting will be Tuesday. Oh, I didn't put it in the right, sorry about that. But it'll be Tuesday, March 8th. And if you want to be added to the operator email list, please email me at my email there and make sure you get that last name right. Otherwise, it will not get to me. Otherwise, everybody have a great day and thanks for joining us. Take care.